You know, this is a day for me to introduce friends, and one of them for many, many years is Dr. Stephen Jones. Even before he was Dr. Jones, he was Stephen to me. He has such an illustrious resume. I'm going to invite you to turn to page 12 to pick up what I'm unable to deliver right now for the sake of time. But he is the CEO of Jones and Associates Consulting, Inc., a firm that specializes in diversity and organizational effectiveness consulting. The mission of Jones and Associates is to develop leaders and human systems that counter oppression through diversity, inclusion, and organizational excellence. Another world-famous speaker, Dr. Jones has traveled all over the world, but here in San Diego, he serves, in addition to his role as an international speaker, as president and CEO of the Central San Diego Black Chamber of Commerce. He is a dynamic speaker, transformational facilitator, and an innovative executive. All of these words have been used to describe Dr. Jones. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science, a master's in multicultural counseling, and a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. He's sought after by leaders seeking to make real change as they prepare their organizations to step into the 21st century. He brings over 22 years of experience helping individuals and institutions throughout the country and the world move beyond talk and into action. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker for the day, Dr. Stephen Jones.
Good morning. How are you, San Diego? It has been a morning focused on forgiveness. Did you hear what that young man said? He said, I was oppressed. I was depressed. I didn't see my worth until I made a change, supported by my parents. And I found educators and friends who saw in me what I knew was already in me. And did you hear him list off the awards he won? I'm going to ask you that again. Did you listen and hear him once he found himself and the support that our honorees talked about? You see, Dr. King understood the importance of human dignity, the inalienable right to be respected. That is not a right that is earned. That is a right that we come with. You see, the two guardians of our honorees saw the humanity in both of their children. Are y'all hearing me this morning? I don't know if you hear me. Are y'all hearing me this morning? You see, you have to touch the humanity of yourself to see the humanity of others. Somebody told me once the definition of power is the ability to define reality and have other people respond to that reality as if they created it themselves. If I can get you to stop seeing you as human, and if I can get you to stop seeing others as human, guess what? We can be inhumane to each other. I had a chance to go to Cuba one year over New Year's, and I learned that Castro brought together all of the best entertainers from around the country. And he brought them to Havana in a huge plaza, and hundreds of thousands of people showed up. And above the stage was a sign. And the sign said, the battleground of the 21st century is the battleground for your mind. You see, Hitler's minister of propaganda said, if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. I think we have some folks in the current administration who have taken a page from that playbook. Funny, we used to say, as we work with organizations around the world, we used to say that, we didn't know how good things could be until everyone was allowed to play. We didn't know how good baseball could be, Jackie Robinson, until everyone was allowed to play. We didn't know how good basketball could be, women's tennis, golf, women's gymnastics. I used to say we're still working on hockey, but I can't say that no more. You see, Dr. King understood systems. Dr. King understood power. Dr. King understood inclusion, equity, and the importance of social justice. We've all heard a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, we're going to move into the interactive part of this keynote because, see, in this work, we don't get to be passive. You can't stand still on a moving train. In this work, you did not get up this morning to be a passive listener. You got up this morning to recommit yourself to action. I know a lot of people who talk a lot of good words, don't you? So here's what I'm going to need you to do. As I talk with you a little bit later on, at some points in time in our morning together, I'm going to point to this side of the room, and I need you to say, stand up. That was good. I did point. We're going to do it on purpose in a second, okay? Then I'm going to point to this side of the room, and I'm going to say stand, and you're going to say stand together. You got that? I'm going to say something like, they knew they had to. You can do a little bit better than that. They knew that they couldn't afford to not. That was better. It is a competition. And we also understood that we needed to. Oh, y'all were ready. Standing up and standing together. There we go. Oh, I forgot to put my timer on, y'all, because I'm about to get started. Y'all all right? All right. In 1955, Claudette Colvin, a 15-year-old high school student in Montgomery, Alabama, boarded a city bus. Her ride went without incident until she was asked to move to the back of the bus and give up her seat to a white passenger. She refused, replying, "It is my constitutional right to sit here." For her refusal, Colin was removed and arrested. A few months later, the evening of December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks, a seamstress and a part of the Montgomery NAACP, also refused to give up her seat. She was also subsequently arrested. You see, it's interesting to me today that people are surprised at why folks are calling the police on black folks doing everything, doing daily stuff. Like on the phone in a hotel. Like sitting in a Starbucks. Like selling lemonade to become a future entrepreneur. Like sitting in a seat on a bus. Are y'all with me? I our history extends if we don't change not only our actions but our mindsets, not only our mindsets but our systems. We know we have a history of a young black boy coming from the north into the south, looking at a young white girl, not understanding that system, and losing his life. We all know if you don't know where you come from, if you don't understand your history, you are destined to repeat it. Edgar Daniel Nixon, president of the Montgomery branch of the NAACP, and Joanne Robinson, an English professor at Alabama State College and member of the Women's Political Council, along with other African American leaders, set plans in place for a bus boycott. They mobilized the 75% of bus riders who were African American, with the majority being black women. Black women have carried this movement unacknowledged for too long. I'm going to ask all the women who identify as black of African descent to please stand. Please stand. Please stand. Please stand. A round of applause. Sisters, you go unacknowledged for way too long and do too much with too little for too long. Thank you. You see, black women have known for a very long time that they had to, we're gonna try that again. I know y'all wasn't ready for it. Y'all wasn't ready for it. Y'all were like, when he gonna do it? When he gonna do it? They understood and understand that for their families during slavery, during Jim Crow, that if no one else did not, they had to. What we have to do is, in order to keep social justice moving forward, y'all, I'm on a roll. Thank you for being with me. The group of leaders reached out to Fred Gray, a 24-year-old lawyer, to defend Ms. Parks. They also reached out to Reverend Ralph Abernathy, a 29-year-old minister, and a young 26-year-old Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who had just come into Montgomery a year before. A high school student, a seamstress, a lawyer, a professor, community leaders, a 15-year-old, a 24-year-old, a 29-year-old, and a 26-year-old, ages that we would call today millennials. And Gen Z, y'all know y'all talk about them millennials. They are entitled. Guess what? So were these. Entitled to justice. Deciding intentionally that they were not going to be passive and take on the disrespect of the previous generation had experienced. I was doing some work in New York. We were interviewing young people for a training. And one of the young people we were interviewing, he said, you know, I was born expecting inclusion. I thought, wow. He says, that's my expectation, just like I expect your computer systems to communicate with each other. In his speech entitled, "How Long, Not Long," Dr. King referenced the 70-year-old who was participating in the Montgomery bus boycott. And while she was walking, someone pulled up to her and said, "Would you like a ride?" She said no. The person was surprised. They said, "How could you not want a ride? Aren't you tired?" She said, without hesitation, "My feet are tired, but my soul is rested." And for 381 days, she and the overwhelming majority Black community marched. They walked. And on December 25th, 1964, buses in Montgomery were legally integrated. Now the question becomes, why did they choose a 26-year-old Dr. King to lead the movement? Why at that time? Well, Dr. King was well-spoken, he was well-educated. But that wasn't the full reason. You see, in 1955, actually, it was unusual for a minister to lead a civil rights organization. That practice has become much more commonplace since then, but at that time, the belief was that as a minister, Dr. King would be much more capable of resisting attempts at retaliation from the white Montgomery business and political establishment. Dr. King was able to stand up to politicians who wanted to maintain the status of segregation and racism. He was able to stand up to business leaders who wanted to fund their businesses by continuing the practices of inequality and injustice. He was not able to be co-opted, coerced, or concede before the demands of justice were more fully served up to all. So what can we learn from Dr. King and those who stood up and stood together with him to help us stand up and stand together today? I want to offer 4 key strategies. Maintaining our human dignity, leveraging our political power, mobilizing our social power, and maximizing our economic power. Human dignity. You see, I believe Dr. King would want us standing up today as babies are ripped from their families, placed in cages like animals, and records forgotten and lost. You see, I believe Dr. King would want us to stand up today against the dehumanizing process, which would have us branding fellow human beings seeking to better their lives with labels as illegal aliens, criminals, rapists, or a threat to our border security. I learned from Dr. Norm Chambers at San Diego State University. He said, in order to dehumanize someone else, I have to disconnect from my own humanity. You see, when they turned an African into a slave, they also turned a European into a slave master. We both have to regain our humanity. The challenge is to understand that in each generation, oppression morphs itself differently into the next generation than it did in the previous. From slavery to Jim Crow, from Jim Crow to Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. We have to, and I see adults all the time, they say the kids are much better now, expecting that the issues look the way they did in their generation. You see, the things that we call today bullying are really racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism. We don't call them bullying, we don't call it racism, we don't call it sexism, we call it bullying, leading to kids disconnecting from their humanity. stocking up their weapons and coming into our schools to take lives. As our honoree said earlier, we have to take care of our kids. Social power. I believe Doctor understood the strength of social power and the importance of standing together against sexual harassment, abuse, misogyny, and the culture of violence towards women. A recent study by the Pew Research Institute found that the hashtag #MeToo movement was used more than 20 million times after Alyssa Milano asked women to post the hashtag if they had been or had experienced sexual harassment or abuse. I was talking to someone and they said to me, I think the hashtag #MeToo movement has gone too far. I said, really? I said, you mean treating women with respect has gone too far? Seeing the dignity and maintaining the dignity of women has gone too far. He said, oh, I never thought about it that way. I said, well, hashtag #MeToo is not doing things. It's the idea of intolerance, of disrespect and abuse based on the actions of disrespect and abuse that had been tolerated and occurred in silence and secret. You see, one of our clients is MRC Capital, and when the Kevin Spacey incident occurred, I was doing some research and I saw some articles that said, well, people knew. And I read more. And they said, well, here's how we know they knew. I said, tell me. They said, well, they learned that Kevin Spacey didn't like young men with beards, that he did like young men 19 to 25. So on the set, the young men who were 19 and 25 started doing what? Growing beards. They knew. You see, it is the culture of silence around abuse and disrespect that requires action. You see, it was the hashtag #MeToo that gave light to the darkness that the young brother talked about earlier. It was the Black Lives Matter and the fact that every phone is a recording device that gave light to the darkness. But now it gets complicated. How am I doing on time, D? I'm running out? Okay, very good. Let me take a little more time. It gets complicated, and it gets complicated because of this dynamic. And then I'm gonna be quiet. It's the dynamic of when you are part of a group that's in power, your group's way of doing things gets built into the institutions, made invisible, and just called normal. And you don't think about yourself as a member of a group. I'll give you an example. Any left-handed people in the room? Okay. Do we live in a right-handed world or a left-handed world? Right-handed. What tells you we live in a right-handed world? Scissors are set up for right-handed people. What else? Desks are set up for right-handed people. Shaking hands, notebooks, 3-ring binders, place settings, ladles, watches. What was that? We drive on the right-hand side, baseball mitts. We pledge with our right hands. We shake with our right hands. Coffee mugs. A right-handed person picks it up, there's a picture. Left-handed person, no picture. It's deep, y'all. It's real, real deep. Now, how many of us right-handed people wake up in the morning like this? My people rule. Power to the right-handed people. The world is ours. No. And how many of us right-handed people, if the left-handed people started saying, I'm being discriminated against, like how many of us would be like, shut up. There is no problem if you don't create one. Quit pulling that right-handed card. That left-handed card, sorry. Looking for special privilege. Like I don't wake up in the morning and think to myself, I'm going to be a good heterosexual today. I wonder if I'm going to have to come out. You know, let some people know I'm heterosexual. I wonder if they're going to want me to teach their kids, live in their neighborhoods. I was talking about this once, and then there was an openly gay man in the workshop, and he says to me, he says, Dr. Jones, man, yeah, because there are some flaming heterosexuals out there. I was like, dang. He goes, yeah, y'all come out all the time. And I was like, what do you mean we come out all the time? He says, well, when you show the picture of your family at work, that's coming out. If you have a picture of your family in your workspace, that's coming out. When you talk about your weekend, if it includes your significant other, that's coming out. I said to him, dude, I never even thought about that. He said, that's part of your privilege. You don't have to. You see, we have to become, like Dr. King, studiers of systems. We have to understand that good intentions alone are not enough. We have to understand that not only do we need to stand up and speak up in the face of disrespect, conscious and unconscious bias, because if we don't, who will? You see, in 2019, I'm going to ask all of us, and this time when I point, I need you to say it and stand. I'm going to ask all of us to make a commitment to do two things. Y'all gonna come up faster than them all at the same time, okay? One more time. In 2019, I'm gonna ask all of us, all 1,500 of us who came in this morning, to honor a man who understood the importance of. And when you get tired, like the young brother talked about today, he found a friend. Because no one achieves equity and justice alone. It requires us to. Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you.